Hey, welcome to episode 210 of Audrey Awesome Podcast. Today I'm talking to an artist who's just really creative in different artistic mediums from cloth to now she's doing gifts to almost everything in between, it seems like, and that's really neat. But then in addition, she's also been really creative and really proactive in creating the life she wants, a life she loves, a life that inspires others in spite of considerable challenges, which is just so inspiring. I'm excited to tell you more about her, but but first, this.
Today's guest, Audrey Molinare Juarez.
Well, welcome back. Let me tell you more about Audrey. Once I get to the right place, I wish that intro had lasted a little longer. Okay, and I found my place. Audrey and I became friends years ago when we Okay, Jason Reed. Audrey and I became friends years ago when we were both attending yoga classes at Pilgrimage of the Heart Yoga Studio in San Diego. A few years later, we both completed yoga teacher training at the same studio. I've been impressed and inspired by how comfortably Audrey has woven yoga, marriage, parenthood, her love and talent for creating art, her career, and being a very active participant in her extended family together. And she does all this while navigating the challenge of multiple sclerosis, known as MS, where she was diagnosed with at the age of 32. Well, she could have responded to her diagnosis by taking a variety of paths. She has chosen to use her diagnosis as a catalyst to live the life she wants. Please welcome to our Greatly Awesome Podcast, my friend and soon yours, Audrey Molinare Juarez.
Thank you for the kind intro, Jason. I love it.
Thanks for being here, Audrey. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you.
So when we met, I was a transplant to San Diego from South Dakota, and I fell in love with the yoga studio Pilgrimage of the Heart, and we met taking class, and after a while, you invited me to do something. Then we went to the college you worked at the time, and then also to what?
San Diego State.
Yeah, San Diego State, and then also to your house and your apartment, and I remember being in your apartment, and you suddenly told me, Jason, I have MS. And I was like, what? Cause I had no idea. It's just, it just did not seem to be part of your experience. I just had no indication that you had MS. So what is it like for you having a challenging health condition that's invisible to many, if not most people?
That's funny. I was thinking back to the time that we went to that ceramic sale at San Diego State. It was over 10 years ago now. I had just moved back to San Diego, and before that I was living in New York City, and I loved New York. I was a nanny, and I liked the kids I nannied. I was with them for 5 years, but what I really liked was being able to live in the city and go to all the museums and have time to make my art on the side and kind of just carve out this alternative lifestyle. I went through many phases when I lived there, from trying to figure it out to like loving it and wondering why everyone in the world didn't live there, to like being like, okay, I get it now. It's really hard to sustain this. And right about the time I was feeling like, it's quite hard to sustain this, I don't know how much I'll last here, I started to have really bad back pain. And I thought, it must be from this baby I'm carrying around, because I had been watching these girls and they were older now, and I was doing this new job. I'm carrying this 6-month-old. Now as a mother, I know that, you kind of, your strength grows with baby. So like it's a newborn, and as baby gets heavier, you get stronger, right? But when you jump in at 6 months, that's a heavy baby. And that's a heavy baby for a single person who's out of shape, right?
So that's a really interesting observation that I've never once thought about. As a mom, your strength grows with your baby. Really
in every
interesting.
way, but in this case, it was physical. So taking care of this baby, I'm like, man, this baby is killing my back. So I went to the doctor. Wasn't a very good doctor. Got bounced around a lot. And it took a lot of bouncing around to figure out finally that what was going on was multiple sclerosis. A very scary thing to be diagnosed with. And back then it was 2012. And it was sort of on the cusp of like really helpful therapies being widely available. So they were still prescribing things that weren't that effective and that really kind of messed up your quality of life. And so where I'm going with...
So let me just throw a question in here.
Yeah.
At the time you were diagnosed, had you ever known anyone who had MS?
No, I knew nothing about MS. But a really lucky thing happened that later became a collaboration. This now friend of mine, Leah, I had a friend of a friend. We had all got together and had like an art making night. And I had only met her once. But our mutual friend, when I told her I had MS, she's like, oh, well, you met Leah like last month at that craft thing. She has MS too. You should talk to her.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Like, it just felt like a miracle that somebody, not only that, someone my age, also an artist, similar kind of personality, someone I could like really be like, okay, but what is it really like? And what do I really need to do? And like, how long have you had it? And what medication you had? Blah, blah, blah. All the things I was worried about. So it was like this huge blessing to have this person. She had 10 years of experience with MS.
So she had been diagnosed in her 20s?
In her 20s. The thing with MS, it's a nervous system. It's an autoimmune condition that affects your nervous system. So what happens is the lining of the nerves, the cells attack each other on the lining. Then the body tries to repair these holes in the nerve lining, and you get scar tissue. So multiple sclerosis means many scars. So those scars interrupt some nerve signal, and so you get neuropathy, you get numbness, and it can affect your mobility. Because it's a nervous system, it affects every part of your body. And that's why it's so scary, because you don't know what your particular case is going to look like. There's a lot of different, there's a lot of variety in how it presents. So, so I had Leah and ended up just getting on whatever medication she was on, because it was my only point of reference. And at the time that I saw you, it might have come up in the context of that I had MS, because at that time I was really struggling with the medication I was on. Not only was I fresh from diagnosis, but this particular medication they gave me, it increased my feelings of depression, and it was not a fun drug. I had to inject into the muscle tissue of my leg myself. And it was much different than like a diabetes needle, which is quite small. This is like a big one that goes into the muscle.
How often do you have to inject?
So I had to do that once a week. And it would make me like have like the flu for 24 hours. So just to like know that, you know, at like 6 days, sixth day of the week, it's like, oh my God, here I go again, you know? And so throughout the year, I had moved to San Diego because that's where I'm from, and that's where I met you. And I just needed to be in San Diego because warm weather is easier. I was having a hard time just kind of working and getting around New York at that time. So I needed to come home and save some money, and since my folks lived in San Diego, just be warm and be in the pool, because that was one of the places that in water made me feel good. Anyway, so I just trying to not lose my track here. Oh yeah, so I was on that medication, and I started to feel better after like doing yoga, you know, our wonderful yoga teacher Nicole, and all these things were helping me feel better. The pieces were starting to align, and I was like, okay, I no longer feel totally freaked out about my life. I'm no longer like in a lot of pain. I'm really like making a lot of strides in a lot of ways, thanks to yoga and lifestyle shift. But I still feel really depressed. I still feel terrible. And I had a conversation with Leah. I said, man, like, I don't understand. Like, I'm feeling better, but like, I just was so stressed and so depressed, you know? And she's like, you know, I just went off that medication that we're on, and I didn't realize how depressed I was till I went off of it.
Wow.
And she said, Audrey, I've been on this medication for almost 10 years.
Wow.
I know. And I was like, I'm stopping. So I like went off that medication. And then like a week later, my depression lifted. And I was like, oh my God, I've been like torturing myself for a year with this drug, you know?
Wow.
But it didn't seem like much compared to what Leah went through. But anyway, all that to say is that it is a journey. And that was the kind of the first of many decisions I took to try to like not just kind of like drop into, well, I have MS and everything's going to go downhill. Part of it is I was born at the right time. Like people who were born 20 years before me, or even 10 years before, well, I guess Leah lucked out too, but let's say 20 years before me, because I know people, now that I have MS, I meet all these people that have MS, but I've met a lot of older people who doctors just told them, well, it's gonna get worse, probably in your 50s, there's not much we can do. You could try this, but nothing was really that great. And a lot of times, the other big mistake that doctors used to make is they would say, well, if it hurts, or if you're not walking well, if you're, like if you feel like if you can't do it, just don't move. They would tell people to just
Wow.
get a wheelchair, get a walker, get an assistive device, but don't like push yourself, like don't go out. Like if you have pain, don't go out and walk. But really, with multiple sclerosis, and I'm sure a lot of other neurological conditions, it's very much use it or lose it. And so when you tell people to sit down, you're taking away their future mobility. And that was my big takeaway, was like, even though all of the many things I tried, some of them weren't great, but just the fact that I was like not accepting that I just had to get a device and take some medication and give up life. Like I had this sense as I had some agency in fighting for my mobility, for my future self. Because it is like a flare-up kind of deal, MS, and especially in the early phases of having it, well, you'll have a bad flare-up, you'll have a bunch of damage that happens during that flare-up, and then it kind of mellows out, and you kind of get your mobility back. And some people, many of us will do like a extreme round of steroids to kind of shrink that flare-up to prevent damage. But that's just treating the symptoms, not exactly treating the problem. So I was doing lifestyle stuff and just diet and yoga and stuff for a long time. And then after I had kids, it wasn't as easy to maintain that lifestyle. And also I had a bad flare-up that made me realize, okay, I need to rethink this, and I need to find some medications that work, because in that flare-up, in the first flare-up, it was my legs and my feet. It was like I felt like I was like walking on pillows, and I lost some strength and coordination, and that eventually came back with this. There were little things that happened in between with my vision, but then this one that I considered another kind of turning point in my relationship with the illness or condition was I had this weakness in my left hand. It was like all of a sudden I couldn't use, and it's interesting how the nerves divide, but it was like half of my hand didn't work. And so like I couldn't like put anything on, I couldn't like screw anything in. You don't realize how much you use half of your hand.
Yeah.
And like I kind of think of myself as a strong person, but actually I've had a lot of physical events in my life that sort of humble me and realize not as mentally strong as I think I am when it comes to pain or discomfort or things that disorient you, right? So that made me decide to get back on the path of figuring out medication. And now I'm on a medication that is working for me, and it's once a year. It doesn't make me depressed. I don't have to inject it myself. And so, I feel good that that's helping. And so now I'm doing I've been through phases of like absolutely no medication. Now I'm like, yes, medication and exercise and diet when I can, and community and art and work. It's like, it's everything, right?
So right now you're really doing the everything approach to managing, healing, living the life you want to live.
Definitely.
So a few questions back. Let's back up for a sec. You mentioned that you and Leah collaborated.
Yes, we have had an ongoing collaboration for, I think it started right before the pandemic. And we started writing letters to each other.
Mm.
And so we plan to put it together in a book. We're a little bit like not sure if it's going to be like what kind of format the book would take, but it's definitely going to include a back and forth and letters. I think it might be more digestible if it's sort of edited down and all that, but we want to kind of preserve the feeling of the letter exchange, because we took very different paths as women, just by the fact that I had kids and she didn't, and this all happened right before the pandemic. And so the pandemic was, difficult for everybody, but definitely there was that like added layer for anyone who was involved in caregiving, whether it was for a parent or a kid or a family friend or whatever. And since I had a 2020 baby and a 2.5-year-old, I had a different experience as someone with MS during COVID, I guess is how you would say it. But we were both like, just when our conversation originally started, we were just thinking about like, there's nothing out there that really shows kind of like what a mind bender having something like this is, what it really feels like on a day-to-day, how it kind of affects your psychology and how your relationships and the decisions you make. And there are just certain things that were kind of universal between us because of the MS thing. And we thought that was interesting. And also we're both artists. So to have that kind of artist lens of being able to kind of put things into a little bit less typical terms. I don't know.
When you say the artist lens, putting things in less typical terms, can you say more about that?
I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but let's say, I think that when you are an artist and when you're more comfortable with other forms of communication rather than writing alone or speaking alone, there's another dimension there. And sometimes I don't know how to describe it, but when I have a conversation with someone who is not interested in making and not interested in curating and is just fine with doing and following whatever it is, it's a little bit harder for me to connect. But when I engage with somebody who is kind of not 100% satisfied with the status quo, either in their own life or society, or even how something looks, or it could be a silly thing or a big thing. I just think that it's just a more interesting space for exploring humanity. Those sort of like, I don't know, just like wanting to share your unique expression that doesn't fit the mold.
And then you not only apply that to art and like this creative project you're doing with Leah, but you've applied it to how you've approached the challenge of having MS, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just like, yeah, just alternative thinking, right? I'm going to go to the doctor and I want to hear everything this smart doctor has to say. But I know there's a bunch of other doctors out there.
Mm.
And like some people, they're fine with just going to their doctor. Doctor tells them something and they do the thing. And some people are just fine with just trusting. And I don't know. I grew up to be a little bit more, for whatever reason, maybe because I'm a third child, maybe because I have a lot of artists in my family, maybe because my dad is like someone who just asks a lot of questions and wonders a lot, and instilled that in us as kids. But I don't know, for me, like now, I always thought like I always thought like art was about, okay, growing up I thought art was about like the thing that you're making, you know? But I always knew that I felt better when I did it, so I had to do it. So I would make art to feel better, all the while thinking I'm trying to get better at making a thing. And then at a certain point in college, after college, when I was sort of trying to apply to grad schools, and so I'm like, I don't like need to go to college to like learn to make a thing, although I'm sure I'm going to learn to make new things there. I need to go because I can't exist anywhere else right now. Like, I need to be around like-minded people that push me to think about that push me in that same direction where I'm already thinking. Anyway, so I realized it was much more about environment and community and ideas. And then when I went to grad school, I kind of got away from the like skill-based part of art. I did some of that, but it was more just like there was no teachers teaching me a skill-based thing. Now I was interested in using any medium to achieve an idea, as opposed to mastering a medium. And so that kind of stuck with me, that mentality. And it also, ironically, kind of pushed me away from teaching. Like at that time, I got real discouraged by the college art trajectory, the teaching in college trajectory, because you had to be willing to travel to wherever there was a job. You had to take a job for adjunct pay and no benefits. And you had to be willing to move when that job was no longer available to a new city. And when I graduated, I wasn't willing to do that. So that's why I went to New York City, because all I knew is I needed to see more art and learn more about what it means to make art. I just needed more input. And so I was like, I'm just going to go live in New York since I'm not married, I don't have kids, and I just want to like be in this inspiring place that's so different than where I grew up. And I had studied abroad in college, and I think that was like part of the draw of wanting to be in I had traveled, I was going to grad school in Georgia and had traveled to New York a lot. And so traveling there was just like, I don't know what I want to do. I haven't figured out what job I want yet, but I definitely want to live in that city. So I just made that my priority. And coming back to San Diego, it's interesting because it was much more like, oh no, I have to move here because my body is not really responding to the New York winters. With MS, you're very sensitive to temperature. Your temperature gauge gets all out of whack. It's like San Diego was like built for people with MS because it's pretty much 60s and 70s and 80s. With MS, when you get below 50s, your feet feel cold and painful all the time. And when it's above 90, your brain feels like you just can't think as well. You get real frazzled. So it's sort of like this delicate orchid kind of people. People with MS are like these little orchids, they have to have the perfect conditions.
So a lot of lucky things. I mean, you mentioned one that you're living with MS at a time when there's lots of advancements, and then another thing is you just happened to grow up in a place and have your beloved family in a place that's conducive for someone with MS.
Yeah. And
That's
even though there's a
amazing.
lot of ups and downs with living close to your family, as you know, like overall a very supportive environment. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I don't know if I've ever asked you this. How did you know that you wanted to go to yoga when you came back to San Diego?
Oh, when I was back in New York before I moved here, I used to do yoga, but not religiously, just like a little bit. And then in college and in New York. Then when I had so much pain, I only really felt good when I was laying on my back. And so then I don't know where I got it. I like found some stretch book online that came with a little rope. And I just did all these like exercises in the stretch book. And this one was a good one because most of the exercises were laying down. So I could like have my foot in the air and like the classic, like I'm forgetting the name in Sanskrit, but where you lay on your back and your foot is up and your legs extended and you're just stretching your hamstrings, right? That was the time I felt good, was during stretching or immediately after, or if I was in the pool, that whole like first year of flare up. So once I felt a little bit better,
So this first year, are you still in New York for most of that first year?
I think I moved halfway. I think I moved took me like 3 months to get diagnosed and then 6 months after that to kind of like get out of town. And then
So you had freshly diagnosed and then you were also moving across country.
Yeah.
That couldn't have been easy.
It was so stressful. I figured out if anyone ever has to move from east to west, you can actually ship your stuff on a pallet through Amtrak, and it is the cheapest way.
Really?
Ship boxes cross country. If you can fill up a whole pallet, they charge you, because I had a lot of art supplies and art and stuff. They charge you per square foot, and it's pretty cheap. And so part of the reason, I think it cost me like $500 to move that stuff.
So how did that come on your radar even, like contacting Amtrak about it? That's interesting.
I don't remember. Maybe a friend mentioned it to me. I probably could have sent half as much stuff because I sent 2 pallets of stuff, but I didn't have the bandwidth to I got rid of a lot of stuff, but I didn't have the bandwidth to go through every single thing, So I shipped a lot of stuff that I ended up throwing away, but it was cheaper than a moving truck for sure, and I didn't have a car because I was in New York, so.
So you was doing a stretching book in New York City, and then
I moved into that little apartment, and that was near Pilgrimage, and so that was the closest yoga studio. And I started taking classes from Nicole, and that's where we met. We were both in Nicole's class. And she has such a charismatic personality. She's such like a fearless leader and like a mentor to everybody. And at that time, I was really struggling mentally with everything. And so to come into her class and have someone who would say, this is exactly how the pose has to be, and this is how long you're going to stay in it, And it's hard, but it's hard for all of us, so just keep staying in it. I don't know, it was very grounding for me. It was like I could actually turn off my brain, and I could do something that was really hard for me. I would be like shaking. I mean, I'm sure you too, in the early days of Nicole, like being in those poses, they were really hard. But I do think that kind of muscle building, because it is like weightlifting, because you're lifting your own weight the whole time, that kind of muscle building where you're like actively contracting and stretching at the same time for long periods of time, because those were like minutes. Like we'd be in those poses for like some of them for like minutes. That's very Iyengar style, you know. I don't know. I think it just was the perfect thing for MS. I think it was the perfect thing for my nervous system at that time. And it happened to be a really good foundation for yoga teaching, because I've gone on to teach other styles of yoga, and it has come in the most handy as far as knowing what to say to someone in a pose, or helping someone one-on-one and being able to look at their body and be like, oh, well, it looks like this part of your body is not really working here. Like, let's, you know, it was a style that gave us a lot of tools for teaching. So
how did you? So you were taking classes and really getting a lot out of that. How did you come to a point where you're like, I want to learn to teach yoga?
You know, a lot of the people who ended up being in our group with you and me, we were all in the same classes all the time already. I think that's what was strong about our group, is we were there was like a good 6 of us at least, you and Cassandra and Amy, and a lot of us who we were just there every day. I remember Antonio, he was there. He didn't do our training with us. He did it another year. But like, there were all these people who we just like loved being there together. We loved that community. We'd rather be there than at a bar.
Yeah.
There was just like that place, for whatever reason, it had a really good, like you didn't feel rushed out the door. Like you really just felt like it was your own personal living room.
Yeah.
And so I think most of the people that started the program at the time, I think we were all just kind of like, yeah, I just want more Nicole. Just want to be around Nicole more and learn more and get stronger. And I don't know if I'll teach, but I didn't think I would teach. I just wanted to get back. I just wanted to crack the code of yoga. Like, I just wanted to figure it out. And then, like, maybe a couple sessions into it, I was like, maybe I will teach. I don't know how you felt. Did you feel like you would teach right away, or did you go into it to teach?
I went into it just to experience yoga on a deeper level. But
Same.
But then you've taught a lot since you graduated.
Yeah, I have. I just kept going with it, and I found the teaching really rewarding, and I like that way of relating to people. I didn't realize this about myself, but I'm learning that I'm just someone who likes to learn new things and then share it. It's like part of how I learn it. And so it makes sense for me to be in teaching. And my sister's a teacher. She's 9 years older. She was a big influence on me. So I've had various teaching things sort of experience throughout my life. I taught swim lessons as a kid when I was a teenager, and I taught it at an after school program when I was done with college. And so it's always been something that I kind of come back to in between other jobs. And now that I have kids, it's kind of what got me back into education, because I wanted to I'm a very practical person, and I wanted to be on their schedule and all that. But then once I never, I don't know, I didn't think I would be into teaching high schoolers, but here I am. I'm in a program now where I'm learning how to teach high school art. I'm loving it. I'm loving that age, and I just like I'm constantly surprised and delighted by like proving my my prejudices wrong. Like, I'm never gonna teach high school. They're too difficult. They're too this, they're too that. At some point, I've definitely said that. Then I had little kids, and I was teaching little kids. So I would go teach art all day to little kids, and then I'd come home to little kids. And started to think, it might actually be nice to work with some older kids and not be with the same age all day. So that kind of got me over to thinking about high school. And then so I requested to be placed at a high school with this student teaching program I'm doing now. And it's been really cool. It's been really cool. I'm really impressed by this group of kids, and it's an art-based high school. It's actually an art magnet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the School of Creative and Performing Arts. So they have like music and musical theater and film and digital media and painting and drawing, and then I'm teaching a photo class with my mentor teacher. And it's neat, and it's a very diverse population. So it's really cool to see kids like sharing their background or their ideas about things. Also, I'm just fascinated by youth culture right now, because these kids grew up with not just cell phones, but smartphones. You know what I mean? From a very young age. So you and I are on the cusp, right? We grew up with, like, in college, we were maybe doing some email as like our big tech thing.
Oh, yeah.
But
that was a big deal.
These kids are growing up with TikTok, at age whatever. It's middle school and high school where I'm at. So it's interesting, and it's interesting to see how that affects how they think about being message makers, because that's what artists are.
How from what you see, how is the technology affecting the younger generation?
I think technology is advancing, is progressing at a rate that's a little too quick for the field of education. I think it's going to take teachers, institutions, a while to catch up with shifting teaching methods to adapt to the society that we live in based on the technology available. But I do have faith that there's people who are willing to not just check boxes of what to teach, but teach kids how to be critical thinkers. I think it's increasingly crucial for kids to be critical thinkers. Because it used to be, I grew up with literally encyclopedias. I'd get a school report and be like, okay, let's go over to the encyclopedias and open it to that page, and there's your 2 paragraphs. And then if you're ambitious, you go to the library and expand upon that as a little kid, right? And now kids have so much information, but they don't know how to, let's say their parents are working a lot. Who is the person teaching them how to distinguish between a real image, a manufactured image, like credible news, false information, misinformation, like real history, fake history? It's the Wild West kind of right now right? So I think it's an important time to be an educator, especially someone who's teaching people to think critically.
As a teacher, you're also teaching young people obviously to be creative.
And
How where are you finding that in general that younger people excel creatively, and where do they kind of struggle?
they have kind of a limited attention span for things, but they're sort of fearless, a little more fearless, I think. Because if they have an idea, they do a Google image search. They get a bunch of ideas, and they can even search art that other people have done. It's kind of like that, or whatever. And they seem to be a little bit less bogged down by doing stuff the right way.
Oh, and that's really good.
Yeah, than like maybe older generations went through. They're also, and I don't know if it's just the school I'm at, they're also just very kind of open, like the whole like gender thing, and like we have our seating chart, and I kept getting it wrong, like everybody's pronouns, not because just because I didn't have it written anywhere handy. So I went through and like asked everyone their pronouns and put it on the seating chart, because that was the only thing I had access to see. I wasn't seeing the teacher's computer roster sheet. And I was really surprised at like how many variations there were. Like there were
Wow.
people who put like they, she, they, some people say she, he, some people say he, them. Like they really are just like interested in challenging the status quo on that and living it and insisting that they're supported on it. It's really cool. So I love that there's that built-in education of like youth culture. It's like, you know, they'll correct you if you accidentally use the wrong pronoun or whatever, and they feel confident. I think that's really cool. That, I mean, when I was a kid, people were afraid to even think they were gay, let alone say they were gay. And now it's like, yeah, I'm a she, him, and I, or whatever. Like I'm a she, they, and they don't care. Like they don't even say it. Like they're just like, oh, whatever. That's my partner, and that's my, oh, their pronoun is they and not he, and you know, they're just always like, they're so fluid and they're so chill about it. You know, versus like our parents' generation, we're like, well, I don't understand why I have to know everybody's pronoun. Who cares? And it's like, well, I mean, it's not you, so you know, like it's not your body and your choice or your identity. So I don't know. It's interesting.
That's wonderful that at least your students are finding so much more comfort in the side. That's
Yeah, it gives me
really nice.
hope. Yeah, it gives me hope. I'm like, maybe like this is the future that everyone's gonna kind of, you know, just be a little bit more relaxed about, comfortable saying what they need, and then non-judgmental when people mess up, and just you know, just like that was one thing I really got from yoga, bringing it back, is just like that mindfulness of like being aware of what you say, and you know,
Yeah,
how you live.
yeah, the mindfulness, the slowing down and really thinking about words is really nice. Bringing it back to yoga, you've always, you have young kids, you teach high school students, and I also was very, it seems sweet, for quite a while you taught yoga to your grandma's home, right?
Yeah, to
What
my
was
grandma.
that experience like?
I taught yoga to my not my great, to my grandparents for the last 5 years of my grand's life. So
Oh, it was 5 years.
yeah, was like 90 from when she was like 92 to 97.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the experience of doing yoga like for her?
It was so cool for both of us. It was chair yoga. And I think what she got out of it most was like learning how to breathe, like how to breathe fully. And it made her a lot more like, it made her a lot more peaceful and relaxed and sort of comfortable. It also made
That's
her a
huge.
lot stronger. Like we worked on like getting in and out of the chair, some practical things. We always did a shavasana. We always did a shavasana at the end, where I'd do like a little massage on her shoulders. So I have really good memories of that, having that like intimate experience with her and my grandfather towards the end of their life.
Wow.
Especially in the years where they got closer to hospice and to death. So it was really special for me. I feel really grateful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When you say teaching her to breathe more fully, I mean, people who don't do yoga might hear that and be like, well, yeah, we all breathe, Audrey. What do you mean by breathe fully?
Breathing's automatic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the automatic breathing you do will definitely keep you alive.
But what do you mean by breathing more and more fully?
Well, the thing I noticed in my students, and I picked this up from multiple teachers and feel it in my own body, but there is a tendency to take in the breath at the beginning of the breath, take it in very quickly, and then not finish. So if we think about extending the breath as long as possible and continue.
Extending the inhale, you mean?
Yes, extending the inhale. So like instead of breathing in quickly, the in-breath is often quick at the beginning and then peters out. But if it's slow at the beginning, it can kind of build. And the more even you can get the breath to be from beginning to end, the more oxygen you're actually going to get to your brain. So it's sort of a physiological thing, actually. Then you can hold the breath for any amount of time that's comfortable to you. That part's not so important, but you're kind of like bathing your cells with oxygen, your blood cells. And then the exhale, often people just like short, quick. So again, you're not fully exhaling. So it's just about fully emptying in a slow, continuous way, and then slowly filling up in a slow, continuous way, and then adding a pause. So that's whenever I teach any variation of breathing exercises, that's my focus.
And what benefits does learning that slow breath? How does that benefit a person?
Well, what do you think? You experience it, right?
Oh yeah. I just don't explain it much. So
Let's see. I think, yeah, it is hard to explain. I think it's just like a general, for me, it's like an anti-anxiety. And it makes sense, right? You get anxious and the first thing that happens is your breath goes. And my son struggles with that a lot. Joaquin, my older one, he'll be like, he'll make these funny sounds. And I say, the thing that feels good about making that sound is the way that you're exhaling, you're letting it out. Like that sound is letting you let it out in an even, controlled way. And it's his solution to like holding his breath And so that's like an anxiety reliever for him. He'll like do these sounds, right? And so it's interesting to see in kids, they will like self-regulate and they'll come up with their own strategies. But as you would get older, maybe out of touch, or it's not socially acceptable to do funny sounds or whatever, like you kind of have to reteach people how to be in tune with their body and give them some strategies, and then they can kind of build on what feels good. But there are a lot of pranayama exercises that include sound for that reason, because it forces you to even out the breath. Just like I can't think of the name of it. What's the one they always Ujjayi? So the reason Ujjayi breath works is because it's like that ocean sound. So you engage the back of your throat, ocean sound coming out of the nose. But the reason it works is it's just you're evenly exhaling. You're evenly inhaling so that you're not like running out and shortening it quick. So it lengthens it. Gives you more oxygen.
Well, this is what we just talked about right there is so very, it's just so, I know I found it so very important to my sense of well-being, and we could spend a lot more time on that because it's a big deal. But before we go, I really want to ask, what would you say to someone who goes into the doctor and gets a fresh diagnosis of something something with a big name that's
scary?
That's scary. What would you say to?
I think I would say, if I could distill it down to the most important thing, I would say don't hide out. You know, Brene Brown has a quote when, like, in interacting with people kind of for success or whatever. She says, like, if you have a conflict or you have a hard time with someone else, she says, don't shrink, don't puff up, hold your steady ground. And I think that's true here. Don't shrink, don't be afraid and hide out, don't puff up, don't freak out, don't make any rash decisions. Just hold your steady ground. Keep researching, keep reaching out, build your network. It's not something you solve in one day. It's not something you solve, you know, from one source.
And it seems like your answers keep expanding, as you mentioned. Like for a while, you were doing mainly diet and exercise, and now you have a different set of answers. And
yes, I think that's crucial.
What's it like to let your answers grow as you grow?
I think it's what keeps me going. Right?
So it's very vital to you.
Yeah, I think it's like, there's a group of artists in art history in the Fluxus movement, and they were more interested in the process of making art than the product. And they worked with this amazing nun in California who did not become famous like many of the Fluxus artists. And she had some rules of like how to live that they adopted. And her name was Corita. She adopted that name. Anyway, I forgot her last name. But anyway, she said one of her things is like teachers, like, get everything you can out of your students. Students, get everything you can out of your teachers. students, get everything you can out of each other. Like, there's no rule except just to make or to do. So it really is just like finding your own way, and don't let anybody else's ideas kind of get in the way of what feels right? And just like, I don't know, like, Jason, like the best writing is mostly just editing, right? So like, let's look at our life like that. We can try things out, but we're always what's the word, reforming or editing or reworking, improvising, yeah, all those things. Like, we're always like taking information and throwing things out and like adding, and it's just like keep the flow, keep taking it in, keep giving, just let go what you don't need and take in things as they come.
I'm smiling because what you say is profound, and it sets us up perfectly for the last question. I talk a lot about doing our imperfect best, and to me, doing my imperfect best means I go for what I want, and when I make mistakes or when unexpected hard things happen, instead of letting them stop me, I try to learn from them and keep going forward. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Audrey?
Well, I could give you a tour of how messy my house is right now. I could tell you about how I forgot for about a week to help my kid with his national park project until finally he comes home and says, "My teacher says I'm not ready to present." And I go, "Oh wait, I guess I'm supposed to help you with that." I could tell you that I put my foot in my mouth all the time and say the wrong things. It's like, for me, and I think for most people, that's how you learn, right?
Yeah. How we learn and how we grow.
Mm-hmm. That's how we grow, right?
Well, thanks so much, my friend. It's great to talk with you and share some of your brilliance and exceptional stories with the Awkwardly Awesome Tribe. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for sharing with me, Jason. It's been really great.
I love doing this podcast so much. Thanks so much for tuning in. And Audrey and I have known each other for years, but in that conversation, I learned new things, and I keep saying, the people you know best, you might think you know everything about each other, know each other inside and out, but be curious, ask new questions, be willing to share new information, and who knows where that conversation will take you. It's so exciting. Please, thanks for tuning in today. Please tune in next week for another Awkwardly Awesome podcast guest, and please comment if you want. We love comments, and thanks for being you in the outro. No, I didn't do that way, but okay. Even when you make a mistake, smile.